Welcome in to another edition of Where the 99 Lead. It's a program brought to you by the University of Pikeville. We talk all things regarding the University of Pikeville. I'm Andrew Joyce, your host, and the title of this program, Where the 99 Lead. Those historic 99 steps lead to the University of Pikeville campus, but they also lead from campus into our community, into Central Appalachia, and into the world. Today, my pleasure again to be joined by the president of the University of Pikeville, Kentucky's 59th governor of the Commonwealth, Paul Patton. Governor, welcome in.
Good afternoon, Andrew. Good to see you.
It's great to be with you once again. I always feel a little smarter every time I talk to you because you bring so much to the table. You were a coal operator during coal's heyday. You've served as county judge executive, lieutenant governor, you've served on numerous councils and commissions on education, and then during your time as governor, known as the education governor, now as university president, you've worn a lot of hats and you've been tied to the role of education in a lot of different ways. And I always feel like I know a little more about it after we talk.
Well, I've certainly had a blessed life, and I've had many opportunities brought about by the fact that I did get a good education. My parents sacrificed a long time ago to help me get a good education. And, I've been here in Eastern Kentucky for a long time. I've seen people suffer because they haven't had an education. And so, yes, I've tried to do everything I could to promote education in whatever venue that I happen to have served in. But certainly these past 4 years on the Hill have been very, very rewarding.
We want to talk about those just a bit, but Paul Patton's educational career began in Fallsburg, Kentucky.
Fallsburg, a little four-room school. I didn't go to a one-room school, but I went to a four-room school. We had 8 classes, so you'd have 2 classes, first and second, third and fourth, fifth and sixth, seventh and eighth. But I had some good teachers that really were interested. Then I went to a small high school, Louisa High School. We had 73 people in our graduating class. But again, I had teachers that were interested. And then I went to the University of Kentucky, got a degree in engineering, came back to Floyd County, started working for my father-in-law, and he helped me start a business at Virgie, where I spent about 20 years. And so, yes, I've been fortunate, and all because I had a good education.
Your time at Fallsburg or Louisa, at what point did Paul Patton recognize that he needed an advanced degree? Because we've talked before, during that time, high school education was a big deal and a college degree wasn't so much. At what point did you realize that it might be a good idea to head on to the University of Kentucky?
Well, you're right. And out of that class of 73 students, 7 went to college.
Wow.
Now it's about 60 out of 100 would go to college in today's world, but then it was 7 out of about 70, or about 10%. But I can't say that I made the decision. My parents made the decision, and it was just a fact. Now, that didn't apply to my 2 sisters. I had an older sister that was the valedictorian of the class, smartest one in the family.
Right.
I had a younger sister. But when I was born, my parents started buying a $25 war bond for my education.
Wow.
They knew they would never be able to afford more than 1 child. And that was in the era when the man was expected to support the family.
Sure.
And so it wasn't a decision that I made. It was an automatic for me. And again, I was fortunate in that I had parents that understood the importance of education and knew the sacrifices that they would have to make. These were before scholarships. These are before Pell Grants, before state scholarships. It was all, they paid for all of it, and I paid for some of it.
Sure. Education ingrained in you at an early age.
My father was taught, when I was very young, taught in one-room schools. When I was born, he was making $38 a month, 7 months out of the year, teaching school.
Sure.
We ate a lot of squirrel, and we ate a lot of fish, and we raised a big garden, or they raised a big garden. Didn't hurt me a bit.
Different world.
Different world.
Different world indeed. A lot of students, a lot of people in the world of education have benefited because Paul Patton was, this is the way it is. You're going to UK, and a lot of folks have benefited from that, including students at the University of Pikeville. And we talk about that because July 1st, you move on to a new role at the University of Pikeville. You've been serving as president of the University of Pikeville since 2009. July 1st, James Hurley takes over that role. You move into the role of chancellor, the first chancellor at the University of Pikeville. What changes will that mean for Paul Patton in his role?
I think it will relieve me of the administrative responsibilities of paying the bills. That's a big part of it.
Sure.
And allow me to have more time to talk to people, students, parents, donors, about the value of the University of Pikeville. My first emphasis is on education and convincing people that in today's world, every person needs a college education. Now, it may be 1 year at a community college. It may be 8 years at the University of Kentucky. It may be 4 years on the Hill or 8 years on the Hill here. But everybody needs something after high school in today's world. So I'll have more time to talk about that and the fact that a private school like the University of Pikeville has to have gifts from people that have been fortunate in life if we're going to be able to provide the quality education at an affordable price, particularly for our students here in Appalachia.
Students at the University of Pikeville will still see Paul Patton on campus.
I'm going to still be on campus. I expect to put in a regular work day. I'll switch offices and responsibilities a little bit, but I'll still be around because I can't call it work. When you enjoy what you're doing, it's recreation.
Absolutely.
And I've certainly enjoyed the last 4 years and the years before that. So I'll still be in what we call the governor's office. When 8-9 years ago, when Judy and I came back from Frankfurt, the college put an office for myself and her. The office that I am in looks a lot like the governor's office. I have a lot of my mementos from my term as governor in that office, and so I'll be surrounded by a lot of the things that I got to do as governor. A lot of those centered around education. Actually, my first inaugural address
Yes.
I made on the importance of improving the colleges and the universities of Kentucky. And when the speech was over, the press came to me and said, "When did you start talking about that?" "Well, you didn't mention that during the campaign." I said, "When I ran a campaign to get elected. Now I'm running the office to do the job."
Right.
And the job is education. Elementary education, secondary education, adult education, early childhood education, and college education. And during the 8 years that Judy and I served in Frankfurt, we addressed every one of those issues. And I believe with some modesty that every level of education in Kentucky was advanced during my 8 years, and it was as a deliberate result of the policies and the programs that we advocated.
And that inaugural address was in 1995.
December 12th of 1995.
And from that day on, Paul Patton has been known as the educational governor. How did education and education reform become such a significant part? Was it intentional heading into your first 4 years to make that a part of your administration?
Yes, because again, as I say, being in Eastern Kentucky, we suffer today because of a lower level of education in general than the rest of the state and the rest of the nation. And the only way we're going to move ourselves up economically is by improving the level of education. As I said in the program last week, a college education is worth $1 million more in a lifetime than a high school diploma. And that is a very good investment. So it was deliberate on my part. Eastern Kentucky needed education more than any other part of the state. We invested more in education than any other part of the state, and I was for Eastern Kentucky. I said in that inaugural speech, I'll be a governor for all of Kentucky, but I will be a governor from Eastern Kentucky.
Yes.
And I think I demonstrated that I never lost fact of the fact that I'm from Eastern Kentucky. I came back to Eastern Kentucky, and I expect to live out my days here in Eastern Kentucky. And I want to see that people have the same kinds of opportunity that I had.
And students from 1995 forward have been touched by the educational reform policies of the Patton administration, and in particular, the folks of Eastern Kentucky have benefited from Paul Patton's time in Frankfort as well. Part of the education reform that took place during your administration, the community and technical college system was brought out from under the reign of UK, and it was made independent. Was that one of the first moves that took place?
Yes, but let me go back a little bit before.
Okay.
In 1990, Kentucky passed the Kentucky Education Reform Act.
Right.
And as much as important as the things we did were, that was the most important public policy decision made in Kentucky in my lifetime. And Eastern Kentucky benefited more than any other part of the state, because for the first time, we had true equal funding formula where every student, whether in Pikeville or in Paducah or in Louisville, the same amount of money, the state would ensure that the school boards had the same amount of money for every student, the basic SEEK formula, and the amount of money for transportation. So we gained for facilities. So Eastern Kentucky has been a major beneficiary of that. But you know, in today's world, that's only the foundation.
Right.
You can't live in a foundation. You have to build the house. And in today's world, the house is post-secondary education. Some kind of education beyond high school, college. Now, college is an all-inclusive term.
Sure.
It includes a lot of things, and certainly it includes the community colleges. Everybody doesn't need an 8-year doctor degree.
Right.
Everybody doesn't need a 4-year bachelor's degree, but everybody does need some kind of a post-secondary, after high school, a career program. It may be welding. It may be automobile technician. It may be diesel mechanic. It may be laboratory technician. It may be a lot of different things. So our community colleges are a very important part of our workforce development program. In fact, half of the students that go to college need to go to a community college. And we have a good community college system. It's scattered all over the state.
Sure.
Now, you know, we don't have a state university here in Eastern Kentucky. We should have, but we don't.
Right.
But we do have great community colleges, and they're doing a great job. But in 1995, they were owned by the University of Kentucky. Now, they weren't the University of Kentucky. They were owned by the University of Kentucky.
Yes.
The people that worked there didn't work for the University of Kentucky. The students going there didn't go to the University of Kentucky. They went to a community college that was owned by the University of Kentucky. Too many people tried to emulate the University of Kentucky, and that's not what a community college is supposed to do.
Correct.
A community college is supposed to meet the needs of a community. Not, we had consultants. Well, let's back up and try to answer your question. I don't know where I'll ever get there or not.
We'll get there.
But so I did. Beginning in 96, we established a study group in the legislature. It consisted of people in our administration and people from the State House and people in the State Senate. We spent a year talking about how could we improve education in Kentucky. And we had consultants and we looked at old studies. We found 3 different studies that said that while the University of Kentucky had done a great job birthing the community colleges and growing them, the child had grown up. It was time for the child to move out of the house and go on their own.
Right.
Well, the University of Kentucky didn't want the child to leave. It represented a lot of political power for the University of Kentucky.
Sure.
But the University of Kentucky needs to be the research university. They need to be looking on the very highest level, discovering the cure for cancer, discovering new theories and doing research, as well as educating students at the very highest level. They were focused on being the biggest community college in the world. They should have been focused on being a high-quality research school. So it was a great battle, but we finally convinced the legislature to give the community colleges their independence. Now, a lot of them didn't want the independence.
Right.
A lot of them wanted that dependency. Sometimes Terry Dotson, our chairman, tells a story about the eagle that needs the push, and that the mother eagle has to push the baby eagle out of the nest from a high cliff.
Sure.
And they better learn to fly by the time they hit the ground.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes you need a push, and that's what the community colleges needed. So, but I don't know of any educator that will disagree with the wisdom of that decision. The community colleges have doubled in size. They're now concentrating on being a community college. And the needs of Paducah are different than the needs in Pikeville or Prestonsburg. Mm-hmm. The needs in Bowling Green are different than Ashland. And each individual community college has got to look at the workforce needs of their community. They've got to be able to change on a dime. And universities are slow to change. Big universities are very slow to change. The consultants said the second worst way to run a community-based educational organization is out of the bureaucracy of a big research university, and the very worst way is out of the bureaucracy of state government. And we had the community colleges, but we also had the technical schools that were really colleges.
Sure.
And we had both of the worst ways. But because the state controlled them both, we could bring them out of those bureaucracies, put them on their own, make them lean and mean, and they've done a great job. So it was definitely the most fundamental and important change that was made while I was governor. But there was a lot more. There was a lot more to it than that. The regional universities and the community colleges and adult education and research universities. So yes, I'm proud of what we did. We accomplished that law in a special session of the General Assembly in May of 1997 and implemented it over the next several years, and it's made a fundamental difference. And that, when you take the Kentucky Education Reform Act, that I didn't have anything to do with, but as governor on a national basis, it was attracting attention.
Sure.
And people were interested in it, and I was the governor of Kentucky, and they were saying, what are you all doing in Kentucky? It's the most progressive thing we've seen. And then you put on that what we've done with the colleges and universities. Again, the most progressive change in higher education during that time. I became known as the education governor, not just in Kentucky, but on a national level.
Right.
And I served as the chairman of the Southern Regional Education Board, the chairman of the Education Commission of the States, Governor Clinton, President Clinton's commission on the high school senior year. Every leadership, every program that the governors were involved in higher education on a national level, I was deeply involved in and ended up leading at one time or the other. So with some modesty, I'm not only known as the education governor in Kentucky, I think I was known as the education governor nationally.
On a national level. And Kentucky's 59th governor. I'm going to give you just a moment and maybe reflect on maybe some changes that you're most proud of outside of some we've talked about. You're tuned to Where the 99 Lead. It's a program brought to you by the University of Pikeville. We talk all things regarding the University of Pikeville, and today we talk about higher education with the education governor, University of Pikeville President Paul Patton, who moves from the role of president's office to the role of chancellor July 1st, 2013. And Governor, we talk about the Kentucky Education Reform Act, which brought big changes. My children were in school during that time. I saw the changes firsthand. A lot of changes for schools in eastern Kentucky benefiting from balanced funding. The changes in the community and technical college system, those are just a few of the things. But during your time as governor, 8 years in Frankfort, early childhood education to post-secondary education, there were changes at every level. If you could just name a couple, three, or even one that you have the most pride of, changes that were made.
Let me back up to we didn't have anything to do with the Kentucky Education Act passing the legislation.
Right.
But by the time I got to be governor, there was resistance building up. People are for change with everybody except themselves.
Sure.
When we start saying you have to change, they resist that sometimes.
Right.
And so the resistance was beginning to build, and we were able to overcome that resistance and what I would say save CARA. So I take some pride in the fact that we helped CARA realize its objective. And then we did the education, higher education in '97. And then my daughter, Nikki, her field is early childhood education. And she kept beating in me the fact that those first 3 or 4 or 5 years are the most important. That's the best money you can spend. So she convinced me that we needed to do something. And so I made that my objective in, I believe it was '98. And so for a whole year I wore early childhood ties. And we passed an early childhood act, I think in '98. And then we realized that there was a lot of people with adults that had not had the opportunity to get the education that we needed. In 2000, we did a major overhaul of Kentucky's program for adult education. So we addressed education at all levels. But our administration really did a lot more than that. I'll talk about Judy a little bit. A lot of issues having to do with child abuse and child sexual abuse and spouse abuse, neglect, and that was the area that Judy started working on. She had a staff that helped her research those issues. She had allies in the legislature that helped her get them passed. I think they got about 22 or 25 separate pieces of legislation passed. Program like Judy's Place for Kids and sure. Spouse abuse shelters all over the state. Protective orders for abusers. And so they had an outstanding program of protecting women and children from abuse and neglect in Kentucky. We did a major, in '98, we did a major revision of the criminal justice system and tried to get nonviolent offenders out of prison and put violent offenders in prison. We eliminated parole for violent offenders. Everybody knows it's wrong to violently injure somebody.
Sure.
But we brought a tremendous amount of professionalism to law enforcement. We expanded the law enforcement school at Richmond at Eastern Kentucky University and required that every law enforcement officer in Kentucky have that kind of training. Before then, a sheriff could pick you up and put a badge and a gun on you and call you a deputy sheriff.
Prior to that, it was just the Kentucky State Police that went through the academy.
That's right. And, well, the Lexington and Louisville police also had an academy, but your city police here could, and many times had no training. And that's a major responsibility. Sure. And you can hurt somebody. So now every police officer in Kentucky has to have that professional training. Just one of the things that we did to make the people of Kentucky safer. We worked on the economy of Kentucky. I could tell you a lot of the things that we did in Eastern Kentucky, trying to create jobs up here. So we had a very aggressive 8 years as governor, and some of the things that we did are still bearing fruit, and I'm proud of that.
Known as the education governor, Paul Patton. Also, you've served on the Council for Post-Secondary Education on both the state and national level. In your eyes, where do you see higher education going from here in the Commonwealth and maybe on a national basis?
Well, we have to continue to grow higher education, but we can't continue to increase the cost of it.
Sure.
We have to become more efficient. Distance learning has a very important place. Now, I'm not an advocate for a totally online educational experience for students in the traditional age group.
Yes.
Students just coming out of high school need to take a traditional college education program, but some of them aren't going to do that.
Developing the whole individual, as we talk.
More than the classroom.
Right.
So some of them are going to, for variety of reasons, go directly into the workforce. And they're going to find out in 5 or 10 years that they needed a higher level of education. So for them, they can get the classroom experience through distance education online. They can't give up their family and spend full time as a student. So distance education has its place. It's growing, and it's going to grow more. But we have to be more efficient in providing educational services. We have to depend more on technology, and we're doing it here at the University of Pikeville. We have a very, very high level of technology in our classrooms, and our students are using technology, and you need to learn how to learn. I think the most important thing, the most important skill that a student can get from a traditional college education is learning how to learn what they need to know when they need to know it. Today's world is so complicated, you cannot possibly learn all you're going to need to know in 4 years in college.
Sure.
So if you learn how to learn what you need to know on the internet, in the library, talking to somebody else, doing research, those are skills that you learn in college, in a traditional college, that are valuable throughout your lifetime.
You're tuned to Wear the 99 Lead, talking with Kentucky's education governor and our president at the University of Pikeville, Paul Patton. Talk about your time as governor and the educational changes that we've seen. We talk also about your time at Pikeville College way back when Paul Patton became a member of the board at Pikeville College, leading Pikeville College in the transition to the University of Pikeville. The University of Pikeville, an institution of higher learning. What did you learn as president that maybe as a board member, as a coal operator, as a county judge, as a lieutenant governor, as a member of these various education councils, what did you learn as university president that you didn't know heading there?
Well, as you've said, I've been an advocate for education for almost all my adult life. One thing I've learned is that it's a lot easier to be an advocate for an education than it is an administrator of higher education. As the president over the last 4 years, I've had to deal with the actual day-to-day challenges that are involved. As a board member, we just looked at the big picture and said, we know we need this, and Mr. President, you make it happen.
Yes.
Well, making it happen is a little bit more complicated than just saying, make it happen. So I've learned that it's a complicated business, and we are a business.
Yeah.
We produce a product. We have customers, our students. We sell that product, and with the University of Pikeville, what we sell that product for has to be enough to pay for producing it. We don't have that state subsidy that gives us a little cushion. So, but I've learned at the University of Pikeville, at least, the people that came before me had put together a very dedicated staff and faculty that really view their work as a mission. And there are some institutions where that's not the case. People view it as a job, and that can get dangerous. But I think at the University of Pikeville, the vast majority of the staff and the faculty view it as a mission. Now, obviously, they expect a payroll. They got to support their family. They expect to be paid for what they do.
Sure.
But it's not just, they're not looking for payday and quit time. As we said in the mines, some guys would just look for payday and quit time. They didn't really care too much about working while they were there.
Right.
Well, the people at the University of Pikeville work. They're interested. They're concerned about the students. I will say, almost every one of the faculty, if a student will come and ask for extra help, they'll get it from the faculty. If they have a personal problem, if they'll come to a member of the staff, if we can help, and we can at least be a friend. And that's one of the advantages of a small university. Comprehensive program, we can give a student a good comprehensive basic bachelor's degree education. But we can give it with a lot more personal attention. And some students need that. Not all students, but some students need it. And you just can't get it at a school where there's 30,000 students.
Right.
You have a professor one time, one semester, you never see them again. Well, here at the University of Pikeville, you'll probably have the same professor 3 or 4 different classes, and you'll see them in the cafeteria every day.
Sure.
So it's a much more personal relationship. It's much more like what you have, the relationship you have in high school. Most of our high schools around here are about the size of Pikeville or smaller. And so you know the teacher and they know you. Well, we can continue that relationship here on the Hill.
Governor Patton, it's been an exciting time on the Hill since your arrival in 2009. And as you said, the board sees challenges and says, go get it done as president. During the past 4 years, we've seen you get it done. It's been an exciting time. We've seen those challenges met, and the University of Pikeville is a better place now that Paul Patton has served as university president.
Well, I've had a blessed life in many different ways, but I will say that these 4 years as president of the University of Pikeville has been as good a blessing as I've had in my professional career.
We look forward to seeing you on the Hill as chancellor at the university.
There.
It's Kentucky's 59th governor, Paul Patton, president at the University of Pikeville, our guest on this edition of Where the 99 Lead, a program brought to you by the University of Pikeville, the leading university of Central Appalachia.